It is a major political and cultural story, no question about it. When New York became the 6th and largest state to approve gay marriage, the media naturally trumpeted the vote as a sign of how far the country has come on the once untouchable issue. And the tone of the coverage, almost relentlessly positive.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news tonight, possibly history in the making.
This is where it all began back in 1969 when riots sparked the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement. Now we can tell you that here in the Village, folks are celebrating.
It is an historic day of celebration and controversy in the state of New York. Late last night, New York became the 6th and largest state in the union to allow same-sex marriages.
The sun feels like it's shining a little brighter today.
New York Gay Pride comes every June, but revelers told us today feels different.
Joining us now to talk about this in Los Angeles, Dennis Prager, the host of a nationally syndicated radio show. And here in Washington, John Aravosis, the founder of AmericaBlog.com. John, you have to admit that most of the media gave this New York vote the equivalent of a standing ovation.
Sure, but I think they do that no matter what happens. Whenever you have a political contest and one side wins, they cover the victor. When Obama won the election, they didn't do a series of reports on, wow, Obama wins, what a bad guy. They didn't say John Boehner becomes Speaker of the House. Is he going to be corrupt as hell? You cover the one who wins that day, and usually it's positive coverage. That's what happens in political contests.
Well, Dennis Prager, I think if you look at the media coverage in California when the same-sex marriage was defeated in a referendum, would you say that the victors got the most positive coverage?
Of course not. Exactly. It was prop hate, and it was covered as prop hate by the press. Look, on another issue, but it's entirely analogous, the Los Angeles Times acknowledged a number of years ago that they could not find a single pro-life reporter at the LA Times. The media are biased. I don't even mind that. I only mind if it's denied. That's all. We have to be clear and honest, and that's the way the media is. And on this subject, it is considered to be as an equivalent. Same-sex marriage is the equivalent of opposing bans on interracial marriage. I just want to say one word on this.
It is the equivalent, but you're here today, Dennis, on CNN. The Family Research Council, which has already been branded a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, regularly goes on all of the networks, not just Fox, but on all of the networks. The religious right has always... You're here today, Dennis. You're not being.
But the fact that Dennis is here on
yes,
this
I'm
one
here today
program.
Because
and is Dennis banned across the networks because he's religious?
Howard Kurtz is open.
Oh, I know. Howie is that sanctuary of sanity of all the media. I do appreciate that.
Let me broaden that beyond reliable sources. Dennis, would you say
Cooper had?
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead. Go ahead, Dennis.
When Anderson Cooper on June 22nd had two guests to discuss the issue: Jeffrey Toobin, your legal liberal analyst, and Evan Wolfson of freedommarry.com. Was I on? Was anybody analogous to me on? Of course not. And it's just expected. And by the way, Anderson Cooper is a particularly good correspondent. And yet even he had only one side on.
He picked one show and has branded the media now for 2 decades as being biased. The media covers both sides of the story, but the media is not stupid, however, Howie. For 20 years, we've been told by people like Dennis that marriages were going to fall apart around the country if gay marriage happened. David Frum, big conservative, who's been on this show before with me, big conservative, said this week that marriage has actually been more stable in the year 2000 to 2010 in the States than it's been for decades. But we've had, my point is, David Frum came along on marriage because the facts weren't there. I think the media is doing the same thing.
All right, first of all, I want to give Dennis Prager a chance to respond because you attributed something to him that he's disputing.
No, it was David we're talking about. Sorry.
Yeah, I've never said that in my life. I don't know anybody who's ever said, anybody responsible, that if there's same-sex marriage, heterosexual marriages will fall apart. Well, we've said other things. For example, the notion that male and female don't matter. There is a war against the notion of gender identity, so that you have LGBT. Why is there a T there? There is a celebration of the removal of male-female distinctions. This is what worries me, not same-sex marriage in and of itself. Gays are humans like everybody else. But the notion that it doesn't matter, for example, was it reported widely? Is it John? I'm sorry, forgive me.
Yeah, that's okay.
Was it reported widely that Catholic Charities has stopped after 100 years of providing adoption services in Massachusetts, that it's happening now in Illinois?
And it was a huge story, and we even reported on it.
Yes, because they prefer... Let me just finish one sentence.
Let me finish. Yeah. Go ahead, Dennis.
This is not a red herring. This is the whole point. That because same-sex marriage is passed, it is now a civil right, and therefore to prefer to give a child for adoption to a married man and woman is considered to be the equivalent of racism.
Right.
So,
we've got it. This is Howie. This is absurd. We're talking about whether the media is biased on gay issues, and now Dennis is talking about I'm trying to turn him into a woman. I mean, this is a bizarre discussion. Let's get back to the discussion.
As interesting as this is,
you obviously didn't understand what I said.
I don't think anybody understood.
As interesting as this is, I need to get a break here. We're going to continue this discussion on the other side. You two can regroup. We will be right back. We are continuing our discussion of the coverage of gay marriage in the wake of that New York vote. And Dennis Prager in Los Angeles, there was a headline in Politico yesterday that said, Republicans on Capitol Hill quiet on gay marriage. Does your side, people who are, have reservations or are flat out opposed to same-sex marriage, have some responsibility for the fact that your message is not resonating as loudly in the press?
Entirely. There's no question. I'm sometimes embarrassed by my side on this issue. But the problem is that it's an extremely complex answer to a very simple statement. The heart tugs toward same-sex marriage. Anybody who has a heart and knows any gay person understands the urge and the desire of these of people, of lesbians and gay men, to have the right to marry. It's entirely understandable. However, nobody's asking, including my side, well, some on my side, what are the consequences? And the consequences are what worry me. When you will teach kids, for example, about anything to do with marriage, if there is same-sex marriage, you will not be allowed to assume that the little girl will marry a boy when she grows up. So you will have to say first, you want to marry a boy or a girl? If you teach about a king and a queen, you'll have to teach about 2 kings and 2 queens. These are the things that worry. In New Mexico, the New Mexico Human Rights Commission fined a wedding photographer.
I mean, you know, we're going to filibuster. Howie, I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit here and have Dennis filibuster about how his argument's all about kids. That's a bunch of BS. For 2 decades, the media has been told by people like Dennis that this was about marriages falling apart. Now that people like Dennis, like 50% of Americans, have been divorced, and guess what? A gay guy didn't cause anyone's divorce. Suddenly, they're changing their arguments and getting hysterical about kids.
Let me turn you back to the coverage.
They've lost, and that's where the coverage is.
Let me turn you back to the coverage by asking this question. When there have been states that have adopted, either through courts or legislatures, gay marriage, and we have seen the television pictures of happy couples, happy gay couples, happy lesbian couples, and perhaps fewer people felt threatened by that. Do you think that turned the tide in the media, in the tone of the media's approach to this issue?
Well, I mean, there's sort of a chicken and egg here. I mean, I'm sure showing pictures of gay people who didn't have horns on their heads probably made the public sit there and say, huh, these guys look pretty normal to me. These women look pretty normal to me. The media itself, I think, has covered both sides. But when someone wins a battle, it is normal to show the victor. You could show a picture of Dennis looking angry on the cover of the New York Daily News. I don't think it would have been newsworthy, and I don't think it would have been interesting. We're arguing about basic news here.
Given the way the polls have started to shift on this issue, Dennis Prager, particularly a lot of younger people not opposed to same-sex marriage, do you think the media are, to some degree, capturing a cultural shift in America?
Yeah, to a certain extent, but they've always overstated it. They were shocked that California went the other way. The most liberal state in the union, that it would have voted to keep marriage defined as a man and a woman. You see, for vast numbers of people, redefining the most central institution in human history for the first time in human history is not a simple thing of, well, we just feel for people. This is huge.
Well, that's interesting, because then you're not that impressed,
in our lifetime.
I'm confused. Do the people not get it? Is society oppressing people like Dennis and the religious right against marriage? Or is he saying that vast numbers of Americans around the country get that maybe they're not comfortable with gay marriage? I mean, I think Dennis is trying to have a culture war battle here rather than talking about the media. That's my problem.
I got a time for a brief response.
Well, you were the one. You were the one who originally raised the question about why we oppose same-sex marriage.
Because your side has said it's about divorce for 2 decades.
So then when I answer that, you say, "Are we talking about?"
Go ahead.
Wait, you raised the question of why anybody would oppose it. I answered why I oppose it, and then you say to me, well, Dennis, are we talking about the media or opposition to same-sex marriage? I answered your question. There are major consequences to the redefinition of marriage.
I feel very safe in saying this debate will continue, but right now it will not continue on this program. John Aravosis, Dennis Prager, thank you very much for joining us.